The secret of longevity is not easy to achieve. To extend life is actually a very difficult task. That reminds me of Romance of the Three Kingdoms. Everyone knows Zhuge Liang. He was very wise, almost like an immortal. He knew the weather and human nature like the back of his hand. He could predict who would ultimately win the war. He could foresee everything, as if he had a divine eye. I think it's fair to call him an immortal. Let me tell you about the story of Zhuge Liang trying to extend his life. Zhuge Liang was about 60, which was considered a very long life at that time. Although he was known as the man who saw through everything. He did feel nervous on the battlefield. He worried about how well his men would execute his orders, and if his opponents would deploy their troops as he'd predicted. Of course, if he messed up, everyone would be dead. It was very normal to feel nervous. One day, he sent a spy to Cao Cao's camp. He found out that he'd fight Sima Yi, a man with many cunning tricks. Sima Yi's intelligence was comparable to that of Zhuge Liang. How smart was he? At that time, he was not that old. I think he was around 30 years old when he fought Zhuge Liang. He was chosen by Cao Cao to fight Zhuge Liang. He was known to possess wisdom comparable to that of Zhuge Liang. He was smart enough to know his men would lose against Zhuge Liang. So he decided to get ready first before engaging him. He knew that his weaknesses would be exposed if he engaged Zhuge Liang head-on, so he waited and frustrated Zhuge Liang. What about Zhuge Liang? As the battle dragged on, supplies were running low. The soldiers couldn't even get enough food. There were not enough supplies or support. The young soldiers ate a lot, you know. Their food was running out. At that point, Zhuge Liang sent spies to Sima Yi's camp. The spies brought back information about Sima Yi's strategies. Upon hearing them, Zhuge Liang, a man known for his intelligence and composure, vomited blood on the spot and fainted. He was overworked, and he had lots of old injuries, having been through lots of battles. He suffered from various illnesses due to stress, fear, and anxiety. He was regarded as a godlike figure, as he served the nation of Shu Han as its strategist and imperial chancellor. His absence would be devastating, and so his men did everything they could to save him. After much effort, he regained consciousness. He ordered his men to fall back. They would stay idle until he gave the order to act. He needed time to observe the celestial phenomena. There, he noticed that something was wrong with the celestial signs. He called out to Jiang Wei, his disciple, and told him about his findings. He said the star of the opposing general was shining brightly. Ancient people believed that significant figures on earth, such as emperors and great generals, were not ordinary people. As such, they had their own star which corresponded to them. There were 3 general stars observed by Zhuge Liang. 3 kingdoms, 3 general stars. The enemy's general star was brimming with strong energy. It was very bright, dazzling, and full of killing intent. On the other hand, the general star of Zhuge Liang's camp was weak and dull. It was as if it'd be extinguished. That was not a good sign. Jiang didn't know what to do. Of course, he was just an amateur at that time, but Zhuge Liang had practiced before. There, he decided to try out some Taoist secret techniques he had learned. He started setting up the longevity extension magic circle. He ordered Jiang to select 49 young and strong soldiers with good energy. They'd be dressed in full black. Each of them would hold a black flag. In Taoism, there is a deity called the Great Emperor Xuanwu, also known as the Emperor of the Dark Heaven. It's said that he's able to control ghosts and spirits with his black command flag. 49 soldiers dressed in black, wearing black headscarves, and each holding a black flag. They stood surrounding the marshal's tent, facing outward. This was both for protection and corresponded to a celestial number. 49 men in black and 49 black command flags. In his own tent, Zhuge Liang placed a large oil lamp representing himself. And also to correspond with the general star of Shuhan. He also set up the Big Dipper formation beside it. There were 7 large oil lamps in total, placed around the edges of the tent. Then, 49 smaller lamps were placed. Let me repeat. A large oil lamp is placed in the center of the tent. That was Zhuge Liang. Beside it, 7 large oil lamps corresponding to the Big Dipper were placed. Zhuge Liang was trying to draw energy from heaven to change fate. Then, at the edges of the tent, 49 small lamps were placed. When night fell, he began to perform rituals like a Taoist priest. Wearing a Taoist robe and holding a 7-star sword, he began chanting and stepped on the 7 stars, hoping to communicate with the heavens. He wanted his fading general star to become powerful once more. He told Jiang that the ritual would take 7 days and 7 nights. At the end of it, if the large lamp representing him remained lit, then he'd live for 12 more years. But if the oil lamp went out halfway, then they'd have no choice but to retreat. Not only that, but Zhuge Liang's life would also be in danger. And so, the rituals began. Zhuge Liang ate only vegetables and chanted a lot during the period of the rituals. It was exhausting. On the 6th day, just after nightfall, Zhuge Liang was quite pleased and told Jiang that there was hope after all. The oil lamp representing himself remained lit. The oil of the lamp needed to be refilled daily. To protect Zhuge Liang's life, his men would make sure it was full of oil. It was burning well, and he was quite happy. Suddenly, A soldier barged in, reporting the presence of enemy troops. The soldier was rushing and charging through the tent flap. And there was a gust of wind from that. That put out the lamp representing Zhuge Liang himself. Surprised, Zhuge Liang threw his sword inside. Alas, my life is over. Life and death are fated. Extending life is truly difficult. At that moment, he came up with a famous phrase. Man proposes, but heaven disposes. Zhuge Liang had given the order that no one was allowed to enter his tent. At that time, he was the marshal, and he lived in the central tent. No one was allowed to enter that tent, and soldiers who broke that rule would be beheaded immediately. However, the soldier who broke in had an urgent reason. He was reporting on the presence of the enemy troops. It was Sima Yi and his troops. Like I said, he was a very intelligent man. When Sima Yi encountered Zhuge Liang in battle, it was like meeting his match and nemesis. Whenever he fought Zhuge Liang, the latter always won. The famous empty fort strategy was a ploy by Zhuge Liang that tricked Sima Yi. No doubt that Sima Yi was indeed a wise and clever person, but every time, Zhuge Liang would be the one with the victory. Still, Zhuge Liang didn't manage to kill Sima Yi. What made Sima Yi so confident this time? A few nights before, the defeated Sima Yi returned to his camp. He decided to read some books, talk to people, and drink his sorrows away. Then, while lying on his chair, he noticed something was wrong with the stars in the sky. He saw the general star representing Zhuge Liang looking weak and fading. How weak? Disastrously weak, on the verge of collapse. He thought it was worth a try. So he sent 1,000 men to raid Zhuge Liang's camp. If Zhuge Liang's camp was only defending and not fighting back, then it would mean he'd die real soon. That's what Sima Yi thought. He sent out 1,000 men for the night raid. At that time, Zhuge Liang had a general named Wei Yan. He was a high-ranking general with great influence. Wei, tasked to keep watch, noticed the enemy troops approaching. And he had to report to the marshal, Zhuge Liang. It was not a mistake from him to come in. Zhuge Liang announced he was unwell, but the enemy was coming and they had to do something about it. He came in to say the enemy is coming. Why did he come in a hurry? Well, it was an urgent matter. He came in charging through the tent flap and unintentionally put out the lamp representing Zhuge Liang. Seeing that, Zhuge Liang threw his sword on the ground and lamented that his life was ending soon. Yes, he passed away shortly after that. He was a great military strategist, politician, and poet. Born into a family of farmers, he went on to become the man who turned a nation's fortune around. You see, even the great, undefeated Zhuge Liang couldn't extend his own life. Wei Yan, in other words, sounds like not able to extend. The lamp went out when he entered the tent, right? That signaled the end of Zhuge Liang's mission in the human world. This is a historical event that everyone should know a bit about. Zhuge Liang attempted to extend his life, but he failed. There are several numbers, 1, 7, 49. These are numbers for life extension. In the Medicine Buddha Sutra, these numbers are also mentioned. Those numbers basically match. Isn't that strange? These are numbers for life extension. What else is mentioned in the Medicine Buddha Sutra for those who want to live longer? There are many methods, and one of the most famous ones is offering the life-extending lamp. It's actually a disaster-relieving lamp that helps you live longer. The Medicine Buddha Sutra mentions that there were many great bodhisattvas in front of the Buddha. Among them, Trimukta Bodhisattva, or the liberated rescuer Bodhisattva, stood up from the crowd. With his palms put together, he mentioned that in the age of image worship, there would be sentient beings who suffer from various diseases. Their prolonged illness would weaken them so much that they may even be unable to eat, putting them at the brink of death, in a state of unconsciousness. Let me explain what "at the brink of death" means. It is when a person is near death and their mind is unclear. They can't drink water or eat food. Their mind is also blurred. They can't communicate with us normally. It is at this time. This is what is meant by "at the brink of death." The said person, the patient, is able to see, but not clearly. The patient can't hear clearly. Everything seen is almost all gray and black. Nothing is seen clearly. This is the state close to death. Although the patient's body is lying in the human world, the soul could be missing, taken by the messengers of hell, to see the king of hell. In hell, the patient, deceased, would be judged by the king of hell. In hell, the patient's deeds would be listed and shown. Then, the king of hell would remind him of every good and bad deed he committed in the human world. Yes, confronted on the spot. Then, based on the good and evil one has done in his lifetime, how much suffering they'd endure in hell will be decided, or whether they will be reborn as a cow or a camel, or as a snake or an insect. Yes, a decision would be made. This is the state of the dying person. The person's body, bedridden, unable to see or hear, while those around him either serve him or mourn for him. The person's soul has gone to the king of hell, where his merits and sins are assessed to determine his future. However, at that time, if his relatives can help him take refuge in the Medicine Buddha, invite Buddhist monks and have them recite to the ailing person the content of the Medicine Buddha Sutra. Then there's still some hope for the person. He might not be able to hear it, but his consciousness, or his soul, would be able to hear it. And his relatives, under the guidance of these eminent monks, shall light a 7-tiered oil lamp for him to offer to the Buddha. This is another method. They could also hang 5-colored spirit banners to prolong life. If they do this, perhaps the unconscious person, who is on the verge of passing away, might wake up in a few days or weeks. How? The person's soul would return from hell, from the king of hell, back to the body or the host. Then another phenomenon will occur. The patient would feel as if he's just woken up from sleep. And he'd remember the trip to hell and everything witnessed in hell, such that he'd be able to describe it to his relatives present at the time. And from that moment on, as he was about to die, he'd understand the harsh reality of karma and retribution. He would then advise his descendants against doing bad things or harming others. Even if they were bullied and feeling furious, they must resist their urge to kill. If one kills or harms others in their dying moments, they would be brought to the king of hell. Those who have sinned shall suffer in hell. And the said person, awakened from his sleep, will describe what he saw in hell, how the sinners were burning in hot oil, or being sawed in half. These are some of the cruel punishments in hell. If you want to help your relatives who suffer the way the said patient suffers, you must always harbor compassionate and kind thoughts. Keep your body and mind pure. First, no malicious thoughts. Do not kill, curse, get angry, get upset, and so on. Maintain a state of mind purity, reverence, and compassion. Chant the name of the Medicine Buddha. And do your best to respectfully make offerings to the Medicine Buddha. Also, make offerings to the monks and masters who have helped you solve your problems. At this point, Venerable Ananda stood up and asked Shamakta Bodhisattva, how should we show reverence to the Medicine Buddha? And how should we prepare the life-prolonging banners and the 7-tiered light lamps? The liberated rescuer Bodhisattva says that if there is a sick person at home and you wish to relieve them of their suffering, you should observe the 8 precepts for 7 days and nights. In other words, no killing during this period. This is the first. Second, no stealing. Third, no sexual misconduct. Fourth, no false speech. Fifth, no alcohol. Sixth, no wearing garlands or perfumes. Seventh, no luxurious seats or beds. 8. No eating at improper times. In ancient Buddhist monastic life, especially for ordained disciples, there were specific requirements for eating. They ate only 2 meals a day. After noon, they would not eat anymore. Yes, no dinner for them. They could only eat again the next morning. Right, only 2 meals a day. This is one of the precepts. This is the basic idea of the 8 precepts. One should also make offerings to the monks, based on one's capability and financial status. Think about it, when the monks chant for you and your family, you will also gain from this. When they help by chanting, the whole session could go on for 1 whole day. Also, you should maintain a respectful attitude all day while making offerings to the Medicine Buddha. Family members should recite the Medicine Buddha Sutra 49 times. Light 49 oil lamps and build 7 statues of the Medicine Buddha. In front of each statue, offer 7 oil lamps. The light from an oil lamp is very dim, barely visible. Even at night. What did the Bodhisattva say about this? The lamps should be as large as a cartwheel. Today, we go for bright light, okay? It's hard to get lamps as large as a cartwheel. Still, get a larger lamp if you can afford it. Larger lamp, brighter light, okay? It's the light, not the lamp, that should be as large as a cartwheel. That would be too big. Unless it's a large pile of wood that's lit, you won't have such a strong flame. Let the lamps be as bright as possible. These oil lamps are placed in front of the 7 statues, and they shall keep burning for 49 days. They must remain lit all the time. They should not go out. This is the Bodhisattva's way of life extension. Also, prepare 5-colored spirit banners. The length of these banners should be approximately 10 meters. When you perform these meritorious deeds, your loved one's life will be extended, and they will also be protected. They will not be misled, taken away, or harmed by evil. Those are more or less the benefits. This is just one of the most important parts in the Medicine Buddha Sutra on how to extend life through light offering. It's not easy, right? We'd all agree that Zhuge Liang was a powerful being. He was a being whom people consider to be godlike, but even he couldn't extend his life. In the Medicine Buddha Sutra, we're shown ways to extend our lives. I think that's already good enough.
Medicine Buddha's miraculous life extension methods. 1. Take refuge in Medicine Buddha. 2. Recite the Medicine Buddha Sutra 49 times. 3. Chant the name of Medicine Buddha. 4. Sculpt 7 statues of Medicine Buddha. 5. Offer 49 oil lamps for the Buddha for 49 days. 6. Make offerings to the Buddha and provide meals for monks. 7. Observe the 8 precepts for 7 days and nights. 8. Hang 5-colored banners.
Dalam rangka ulang tahun Buddha Pengobatan, kami mengundang Anda untuk turut menerima berkah dari Sang Buddha yang berikrar untuk menerangi semua insan. Kami akan menghadirkan beberapa tangka Buddha berukuran besar dan mengajak Anda untuk menjadi bagian dari 1000 orang berdoa bersama mengelilingi tangka. Jika Anda sedang mengalami kerisauan, dapatkan inspirasi lewat JinBodhi. Ingin menghilangkan keletihan dan rasa sakit, energi healing solusinya. Dari anak-anak hingga dewasa bisa mengikuti berbagai permainan dengan hadiah menarik yang menanti. Anda juga bisa menikmati beragam makanan lezat yang tersedia di bazar vegetarian. Ajaklah keluarga dan teman Anda untuk turut menerima berkah besar dari Buddha Pengobatan. Ikuti acara ini pada hari Sabtu 19 Oktober di MGK Kemayoran. Dapatkan tiketnya di Jakarta Bodhi Meditation Center.
小小的红点里，人生就此欢喜。我快乐了，我健康了，我幸福了，我美丽了。在茫茫人海之中，让我与你相遇。小小的红点里，人生变得神奇。我智慧了，我宽容了，我慈悲了，我自在了。因为有了你，生命变得更坚